10:47 a.m., Persian Gulf, 35 miles off the Iranian coastline. 60 artillery guns open fire simultaneously. The concussion from the barrage rolls across the water like a physical wall. 300 shells, 90 pounds each, weeks of preparation, carefully calculated firing solutions, meticulously trained gun crews who have drilled this exact moment hundreds of times. Every single shell falls short. But here's what nobody is talking about. Iran didn't just lose a battle that morning. They handed the United States military a gift that would reshape the balance of power in the entire Persian Gulf region. And by 11:30 a.m., those Iranian commanders would understand exactly how catastrophically they had miscalculated. This is what actually happened. To understand the scale of what Iran attempted, you need to understand the target. The USS Abraham Lincoln is not merely an aircraft carrier. She is a floating sovereign nation. 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered steel, roughly 6,000 personnel operating as a single lethal organism. Her accompanying destroyer group extends her defensive reach across hundreds of square miles of open water, using phased-array radar systems capable of simultaneously tracking hundreds of incoming threats, from supersonic missiles down to mortar rounds. Attacking a carrier group is not a military operation. It is an announcement to the world. Iran knew this, which is exactly why their coastal artillery commanders had spent weeks engineering what they believed would be an overwhelming, unstoppable surprise. 10 batteries, 60 155mm guns hardened into reinforced concrete bunkers carved into the hillsides overlooking the Strait of Hormuz. 15 miles of overlapping fields of fire, designed so that any incoming vessel would face simultaneous bombardment from multiple positions with no escape angle. Iranian artillery officers had studied tide tables, wind patterns, temperature gradients at altitude, every atmospheric variable that affects a shell traveling miles through open air. Forward observers with range-finding equipment were positioned at elevated posts with unobstructed sightlines across the Gulf. On paper, this was a serious asymmetric threat. And that matters because a trap only works if the prey doesn't know it's there. What Iranian Theater Command did not know was that Abraham Lincoln's radar operators had been watching them build that trap for 48 straight hours. Electronic surveillance equipment aboard the carrier group had been intercepting the surge in radio communications between Iranian coastal positions since the previous morning. Satellite imagery reviewed at dawn showed personnel movements and ammunition staging consistent with artillery preparation. Naval intelligence assembled the picture piece by piece. By 9 a.m., the assessment was clear. Iran was preparing a coordinated mass fire barrage. The Americans' response was immediate and surgical. Position adjusted, 35 miles offshore, just beyond the maximum effective range of any land-based 155mm under ideal atmospheric conditions. Destroyers activated defensive countermeasures. Damage control teams went to heightened readiness throughout every ship. Medical personnel staged treatment areas. The Americans were not fleeing, they were setting a stage. At 10:30 a.m., Iranian forward observers spotted the carrier group and relayed coordinates to all 10 batteries. Commanders gave the order. 60 guns fired at once. The barrage was genuinely spectacular, more than 100 shells simultaneously arcing across the Gulf at the height of the engagement, a curtain of steel hanging between the Iranian coast and the American formation. Gun crews working in perfect choreography, 30-second reload cycles, loaders muscling 90-pound projectiles while gunners adjusted elevation from spotters' radio corrections. The physical punishment alone was extraordinary. The noise made voice communication impossible. American radar painted every shell within seconds of launch. Officers aboard Abraham Lincoln ran the ballistic calculations. The numbers confirmed what they already knew. The first shells hit the water 7 miles from the nearest American ship. Massive geysers erupted from the Gulf surface. Thunder rolled across the water. And then silence, except for the splash of the next wave, and the next, falling in a line of white, useless columns between the coast and a carrier group that was never in any danger at all. Iranian commanders realized the problem immediately. Frantic communications flooded the command network. Barrel elevation pushed to maximum, additional powder charges loaded, windage corrections stripped out entirely, sacrificing accuracy for raw distance in a desperate attempt to close a 5-mile gap that the laws of physics simply would not allow them to cross. The second wave reached 30 miles, still short. 300 shells total, 0 hits, 0 near misses. At 11 a.m., Abraham Lincoln turned her teeth toward the coast. 4 destroyers repositioned to engage. 20 Tomahawk cruise missiles erupted from launch tubes in simultaneous clouds of fire and smoke. BGM-109s, subsonic terrain-following precision weapons carrying 1,000-pound warheads. GPS and terrain contour navigation, a circular error probable measured in feet, not yards. 2 missiles per battery, 20 targets pre-programmed before the first Iranian shell ever left its barrel. The Tomahawks dropped low over the Gulf surface and accelerated toward the coastline. Simultaneously, 6 FA-18 Super Hornets from Abraham Lincoln's air wing reached attack altitude above the Iranian coast. Pilots identified battery positions from gun smoke and muzzle flash still visible through the haze. Each aircraft carried precision-guided penetrator bombs designed specifically to punch through hardened concrete before detonating inside. At 11:04 a.m., the first Tomahawk struck Battery 1. 2 gun positions destroyed instantly. Ammunition storage detonated in secondary explosions that sent a fireball hundreds of feet into the air. The battery fell silent. Then Battery 2, Battery 3, Battery 4, one after another down the 15-mile coastline, like someone switching off lights in a darkened hallway. Concrete bunkers collapsed, gun barrels torn from their mounts, fire control centers reduced to rubble. One battery attempted to keep firing. In defiance, FA-18s rolled in and ended that conversation with 2 guided bombs through the roof. By 11:30 a.m., all 10 batteries were gone. 5 miles inland, FA-18s located and destroyed the Iranian Coastal Artillery Command Center. Hardened buildings, communications towers, radar installations, the entire nervous system of the coastal defense network reduced to burning debris in under 4 minutes. 20 Marines in 2 CH-53 Super Stallions landed inside the destroyed battery perimeter. They spent 20 minutes collecting firing tables, range calculations, radio codebooks, and ammunition samples. They photographed everything. They encountered no resistance. They flew back to Abraham Lincoln with bags full of Iran's military secrets.
The engagement lasted 2 hours. American casualties, 3 sailors with minor injuries from equipment during high-speed maneuvers. But the consequences will echo for years. Oil markets spiked within hours of the first intelligence reports reaching financial centers. Every Gulf state quietly accelerated security consultations with Washington. Beijing ran immediate assessments of what this engagement revealed about American precision strike capabilities versus hardened coastal positions, capabilities that are directly relevant to certain contested straits in the Pacific. Iran had spent weeks building what they believed was an impenetrable coastal fortress. In 30 minutes, the United States disassembled it from the sea without a single ship taking damage. That is not just a tactical outcome. That is a message transmitted to every military planner on Earth about the cost of miscalculating American standoff capability, about the price of firing first without knowing exactly where your enemy is standing. The real question nobody is asking is this: Iran knew the Americans were watching. So why did they fire anyway? Drop your answer below, because the answer might be darker than the battle itself.